All right, everyone. Hello, and welcome back to Surgical Record Reviews. This is now going to be episode 2. And once again, we're bringing Nick Stier on board here to help us out. Um, so to those of you who weren't already aware based on the title of this video, but it should be pretty obvious, we're gonna be taking a deep dive today on WINTERSUN'S new album, Time 2. And we're also going to be talking a little bit about the Time package that released alongside of it. That was the pre-order bonus. But before we start, I think collectively, me and Nick want to say thank you to Yachty and the rest of Winter Sun for putting this out because obviously, to those who didn't already know, this album has been, what, 12 years in the making, essentially?
Oh, longer than that. They
Yeah.
were recording it in 2006.
Oh, all right. Yeah. So a
Um,
little longer than that. Now, was it worth that time? No pun intended. We're about to find out, right? But before we actually dive in to Time 2 as an album or the Time package, we just I think it would be appropriate for us to both kind of give our perspectives on how we got into Winter Sun here, and just how we became fans, how we got involved with Yachty's music. And Nick, why don't you start here? Because I think you probably have the more involved story than I do.
oh man. I mean, I first heard of them probably in 2009, 2010, something like that. I do know I've been listening to them since like high school. Um, and I remember first finding out about them from some dude that would put like guitar covers on YouTube and stuff like that. And he had a video of I think the Winter Madness solo and the Death and the Healing solo. And he would be talking about the band all the time and stuff like that. And to be honest, at first it didn't really click. Like I didn't really get it. When I first started actually listening to him, probably like a year later, probably like 2010 or something like that, I just listened to Beyond the Dark Sun on repeat because that
Yeah.
song, I loved that song, and the rest of it, like I said, I didn't really get it at first.
Yeah.
And then I kind of went through the rest of the self-titled because at that point that was the only thing that was out,
Hmm.
and I was like, okay, this is actually amazing. This is like a masterpiece.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then I kind of went looking for if they had any other music and stuff like that. And then I heard about the whole time thing. And at that point, time one still wasn't even out.
Oh geez.
So
So
I was
you
just
you
listening
went
to,
you went down that rabbit hole real early then.
yeah, I was just listening to the self-titled on repeat and then like the immemorial demos on repeat.
Oh, yeah, yeah, because I remember you telling me about those initially. I had no clue those even existed for the longest time, so I'm glad
Yeah.
you brought those up to me.
Yeah. So at that point, and then time one came out and I was like, okay, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Time one came out and then Far Seasons was 2017 or something like that.
Hmm.
And then time two finally after 2000, after however many years that's been at this point, what, like 17 years or something, 16, 17 years, it's finally out. And
Yeah.
honestly, it was worth the wait.
Yeah. Not to spoil anything, but I absolutely agree. Before we say anything else and before I share how I even got into the
Yeah.
band, I want to say this is easily album of the year for me. Um,
Yeah.
in all fairness, I haven't listened to a ton of metal releases this year, but just based on a lot of things that we're going to discuss shortly, I can say this is definitively at least top 3 if you took all metal albums of the year into
Yeah.
account. It really is unbelievable. So now I thought I'd share a little bit about how I got into it as well here. So Nick, I already told you this in the
Yeah.
past, but I was going to college and there's this mall really close to my campus, and they have a niche little record store in there. They always had some good stuff, especially in the bargain bin. And one day I just so happened to go in here, and I went to the bargain bin. The metal section had maybe like max like 80 CDs in there, and most of it's just kind of, junk. And I found this little number in there, Time One by Winter Sun. This is the exact copy I found that day. And I already knew the band Winter Sun as a name because a couple of years earlier I had seen the Forest Seasons complete album stream posted, and I just listened to little clips of that, and I thought I kind of liked the atmospheric melodic kind of death metal sound they were going for on that. And around the same time I found bands like Shalmagognar, if I'm pronouncing that right. And yeah, I didn't really pay it much mind at first because I didn't have a physical release to actually sit down and listen to. But like I said, once I got Time One on CD and I looked on the back and there was only 5 tracks, I was like, okay, what's going on here? I was started to really, dive deep. I did a lot of research online. Of course, I listened to the album countless times. I fell in love with it. And yeah, I just started listening to all the rest of the stuff they'd put out. The immemorial demos, like Nick had just mentioned before, also struck my interest. And then the wait began with Time 2. And actually, a couple months after I found that CD, that was when Yachty dropped the Warning single.
Oh, I
And
forgot. Yeah.
yeah, and that was a very strange time because on one hand, I was amazed. I was like, oh my gosh, I hopped on the bandwagon for this band at such a perfect time. Like he's finally releasing new music since 2017. Things, must be
Things are
rolling
looking
behind the scenes.
up.
Exactly. But then you look in the comments and people, are making jokes about, oh, yada, he finally got enough RAM to record 2 minutes of music and this, that, and the other thing. And it was a good laugh, but it also made you think like, was Time 2 happening? And then when I saw the headline on, a bunch of different news outlets that he had announced that Time 2 was finished, I was just like, wow, this is going to be incredible. And here we are now, around 6 months after the pre-order ended, I believe.
Something like
And
that. Yeah.
yeah, and let's just get right into it. Time 2, I already said this once, I'll say it again, seriously, album of the year. So, maybe we could maybe start with like a track by track. I didn't really plan this
Yeah.
out too well. I did write a few notes here.
You're
Um,
more prepared than I am.
yeah, I mean, what's a Google Doc, right? That's
Yeah.
all I got. So first things first here, I want to say that to any of the naysayers who, were giving Yachty grief after the release of Warning, this most likely restored their faith in the band because it definitely restored mine. Because even though I think Warning was a decent little, I don't want to call it like a demo track, it sort of was though.
Yeah.
This is just leaps and bounds better in every stretch of the imagination. Obviously, 2 minutes versus 48 minutes of music, it's hard to,
A
compare
huge,
apples to
yeah.
oranges there. But going based purely on the sonic density, the melodic variation, Yachty's performance on every front, vocally, and then as a guitarist, and then of course Temu, Kai, and
Yuka.
Yuka. Sorry. I'm sorry, Yuka. If Yuka is watching this, I apologize. Everyone is absolutely killing it on this album. Everyone absolutely nailed it. So before we do the actual track by track, I want to preface this, and I think the same goes for you, Nick. Neither of us have actually listened to the entirety of the Time package. We have both listened to Time 2. I listened to it with the 1 decibel less limiting version,
Okay.
just because I like a little more dynamics in my music. It just, I don't know, everything sounds a little punchier to me when it's like that, a little
Yeah.
less brick-walled. But with that in mind, it still was phenomenal. So we can start here with Fields of Snow.
Great intro
Yeah,
track.
absolutely. There isn't, to be honest, there isn't too much to say about this because I feel like more so than the opening track on Time, which was
When time fades away.
exactly when time fades away. I feel like there's a lot more repetition in Fields of Snow, but it's done in such a way where it keeps building and building. Whereas when time fades away, there was a lot more
It
variation, I
changes
feel.
all the time. Yeah.
Exactly. But the way that Fields of Snow leads into the first real track on here, Way of the Fire, is just
It goes
mind-blowing.
into it perfectly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it builds, and then all of a sudden you hear that intro acoustic bit on the Way of the Fire, and you just know what you're in for.
Yeah. I will say I do prefer When Time Fades Away as an intro track more than Fields of Snow.
Mhm.
But like you said, the way it sets up going into Way of the Fire is mind blowing,
Oh yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And I'm actually glad Yachty did include Fields of Snow because if I'm remembering correctly on one of his recent podcasts, I think someone asked him like, were there any tracks that got onto Time 2 that weren't originally planned for it? I think he said Fields of Snow was that track. because when the
Yeah,
album was supposed to be one,
one
album,
big album. Yeah,
there wasn't going to be anything between the track Time and The Way of the Fire. At least that's how I interpreted what he said.
I think Fields of Snow and Ominous Clouds. I think he said were both added later on when the album was split.
And Ominous Clouds we're going to get into a little bit later, but that's another one I thought was just a great, great setup
Yeah,
for what came in the song after. And I think both The Way of the Fire and Storm really do benefit from having these little introductory tracks beforehand. It adds another layer,
just
and
adds to the atmosphere of the songs,
oh yeah.
especially we'll get to it later, but especially Ominous Clouds into Storm.
hmm And yeah, I'm glad you said atmosphere actually, because that was one of the points I wanted to bring up about Time 2 in general, not pointing out any specific song. I think more than Time 1, this album is extremely atmospheric. The way, again, Fields of Snow building the entire way, it's just building the atmosphere. You have Ominous Clouds, which is literally just an atmospheric track with, the rain sounds, the
Yeah,
thunder, and the way Storm fades out and then fades in to Silver Leaves near the end. It's very dense from an atmospheric perspective. I don't remember off the top of my head exactly how much of that was present in Time 1 because I've really been listening to Time 2 on repeat. Um, but I'm sure you'd know better than I if that's a fair comparison to make.
there's a lot more like atmosphere building in this than there was in Time One, because from what I remember, I listened to it maybe like two or three times all the way through in preparation for this Time One.
hmm
For the most part, I think every song just kind of goes right into one another. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
Time, the track, has some stuff at the end of it, but I think that's mainly it. I think for the rest of the album, it kind of just goes one right into the other
yeah. I
for the
mean,
most part.
besides When Time Fades Away, which obviously as an opening track, it's doing
Yeah,
much the same thing Fields of Snow is, where it has to build atmosphere to kind of push you
yeah,
into the main meat of the album there. Um, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting side of Time 2 I wasn't expecting. I was expecting a lot more of the same from what we heard in Time 1, and I'm glad there's some more diversity. It really adds to WinterSun's discography as a whole to hear this kind of n new element being introduced more than ever. And I really appreciate it for that. I think it's fair. We honestly should just go right into the Way of the Fire. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, what is there to say? I I was one of the few people probably who never heard any of the live versions of any of the songs that got onto Time 2 before hearing the recorded versions. So being completely blind going into that song was like it was face melting. Like I didn't
Yeah.
even know what to do.
I cannot relate to that because it felt like torture waiting for the studio version of that song. I've just been listening to the shitty phone recordings for I don't know how many years, and it
Mm.
was just like torture. I was like, I want to hear the studio version of this now. I need it. So the first time I heard it, dude, the song just ripped my face off.
Oh yeah.
It
Oh yeah.
was crazy.
And again, this is another thing I told you off the record, but literally when I tell you that I'd say the first 2 minutes of the song, I felt tears literally welling in my eyes because even though you have to remember I am a pretty recent Winter Sun fan, I didn't have to wait nearly as long as most people for this album. It still felt amazing to have new material to sink my teeth into here. And it was just the quality that was put on display here and the intensity was just completely unprecedented. Um, I feel like Time One was a bit of a mellower album in that regard compared to this.
Like I compare it a lot to like I don't know, like maybe like Winter Madness or something like that.
Yeah. I would even say um it it matches almost Battle Against Time. That's the name of the song
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Gives me similar vibes to that.
One
Now
thing
I
I
want to
want to
talk about the
say about
debut.
this album is just like take all of the best parts of the debut and Time One and just put them into one thing.
Yeah,
Like
I
just
was
absolute best parts, put them into one album. This is what you get.
yeah. I was actually going to say that was in my notes here. I think this is probably the best blend of what we heard on the debut compared to Time One in the Forest Seasons. I think you're
Yeah,
getting much more of that early Winter Sun vibe than you did on those albums. But you're also getting a balance between what you heard on the Forest Seasons and Time One as well. I think this is the
yeah,
most well-rounded album sonically, and I think anyone who is a fan of any Winter Sun album will find something to love about this.
yeah. Because even the Forest Seasons, like that had a lot of like atmosphere, like building in it too.
Hmm.
And same thing with this. It has a lot of, the two tracks, Fields of Snow and Ominous Clouds, that just are basically just straight atmosphere.
Yeah.
And then, well, I don't want to get too far ahead, but like even like the beginning of Silver Leaves,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
it's just atmosphere, just building.
Yeah, I think that's about it for Way of the Fire.
Oh, and the guitar solos.
Oh
The
my
guitar
gosh,
solos
yeah.
are nuts.
Yeah, I feel like you could just talk about the guitar solos on this album for an
Yeah.
hour. They're just so well composed
And
and well played.
yeah. And there are times where I forget how much of a monster guitar player Yachty is
Yeah.
until I like hear his solos again or try to play them and learn them, and I'm just like, dude, like what? I give up.
Yeah, right? Because you look at him on his YouTube uploads and he's like, "Hey guys, Yachty here." And you're just like, "Does this bro even know how to play guitar?" Like he just
Yeah.
looks so unassuming. But he just
And then he can
shreds.
shred like nobody's business.
Yeah. Oh, and vocally, he's
Yeah.
pretty much unmatched too. The fact he's able to do the harsh screams and do all the singing he does on the
Super
album is
nice.
just equally
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah.
And I really think it's no wonder that he on the last uh shows he played live, he actually didn't play guitar, right, at all. He switched to
Yeah.
just vocals.
They
Um,
had Asim or however you pronounce it. Yeah, they had him as a live guitarist so he could just focus on his vocals and stuff like that.
and with the playing on this album, it really does not come as any surprise because I would not envy anyone who would have to go up on stage and play and
Play
sing this
and sing
album
at
in
the
its
same
entirety.
time.
That would be, yeah. But did you ever have any experience trying to learn to play something while singing along with it?
Yeah, sometimes even power chords and singing at the same time is hard enough. I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine playing this kind of stuff and
Yeah.
singing over it.
And I've even tried to play drums and sing. That never ended well.
That's a
So
whole, yeah.
yeah, props to Yachty for that one. And before we get into One with the Shadows, I did want to point out something that I maybe should have mentioned earlier. There, the production of the album, because after two tracks into the album, you can already tell it is so well done. You can hear the details of everything, first of all. There's no muddy frequencies, there's nothing getting in the way of your listening experience. And I actually listened to the MP3 version just because I didn't have enough space on my computer to get the master files and put them anywhere where I could listen.
Yeah.
Um, and even with those MP3s, this album sounds huge, sounds detailed. Um, you could hear all the layers, and it really is just something to behold, first.
Every time each time I've listened to it, it's like I'm able to pick out something new like every single time. Like, oh, okay, I didn't hear that before.
Yeah.
I forgot what song exactly it was, but there was a very quiet like vocal line that I heard that I was like, oh, I didn't hear that in like first like couple listens. I was like,
Mhm.
okay. Everything's super clear with because I remember when Time One initially came out, like I loved it the way it sounded and everything, but everything sounded very kind of muddy.
Hmm.
And this has none of that.
Yeah.
Everything's super crisp, super clear, and you can pick out literally everything.
And again, not to get too far ahead here, but after listening to Time 2 and the original mix of Time 1, it really is no surprise to me at all that Yachty did take the time, sorry, to go back and remix and remaster that from scratch. And I think it absolutely paid off. Again, we'll get more into that later, but having the two albums match really adds to the overall experience of Time in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so now One with the Shadows. This was the one, believe it or not, I was actually looking forward to the most based on the clips that were shared on the pre-order campaign videos. Unfortunately, I would say this is maybe the weakest track on the album. I don't know where you stand on that.
So my first listen through, the first listen through, I loved every track on the record.
Hmm.
Silver Leaves was probably the one I was the most looking forward to hearing finally. And it was my initial favorite. One with the Shadows is probably my favorite now.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. I might need to give the album a few more listens then.
Listen to it, listen through the album all the way through again a couple more times, and One with the Shadows is probably my favorite now.
So,
Um, to me, the first time I listened to it, it immediately gave me debut album vibes.
mhm.
Immediately, like mainly like Sleeping Stars,
Yep. Yeah.
and I was like, okay, okay.
Yeah. Like I see what we're getting into here.
Yeah, and then just the chorus in it, it's probably my favorite chorus of the album. Just
Right.
that melody and everything, and then when it comes back after the solo and he's doing it in the higher octave, and I'm just like, oh, this is so good.
That chorus specifically is why I was looking forward to it the most out of any song in the album. And I will say, even though I don't love the song as much as the others, I still think it is an amazing song. Do not get me wrong. I don't misinterpret what I'm saying. Um, and I thought it was awesome, like you said, the way he sings it differently, each time he goes through the chorus, and that really made it stand out compared to some of the other tracks. I also believe this was the shortest, like actual song on the album, right? Because if we're looking at the four
Yes,
individually, this was what, like 8 minutes, 6 or 8
something
minutes?
like that. Yeah, and I think both the Way and the Way of the Fire. I think the Way of the Fire was like 10,
Hmm.
and Silver Leaves, I believe, is like 13 or something like that.
Yeah. And Storm was quite long too, like 12, if I'm
Oh yeah,
remembering.
Storm. Yeah, Storm. Storm's
Yeah.
probably like 12 or something like that. Yeah. So they're the rest of them are like at least 10 minutes long.
Yeah, yeah. Which is by no means a detriment to the album whatsoever. Yachty has proven himself time and time again to be a masterful composer and writer,
I
and
wish
I
they were
think,
longer.
yeah, right. There's not a single second that goes by in any of these songs where I was thinking to myself like, when's this song gonna end?
Yeah,
Like I wish they would switch to another idea. It's getting old. One with the Shadows being on the shorter side, I think did still positively impact the album because it gave the pacing a little bit
yeah.
more
It helps
of a
balance
dynamic.
everything out. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
I will say just the guitar melodies in it as well. Just that's probably another reason why it's probably my favorite now, because it has those kind of, I don't know how you describe it, almost melancholic kind of sound to them, of that like traditional Finnish music that you hear in a lot of the Finnish bands and stuff like that. Um, that's probably another reason why it kind of jumped to my favorite.
yeah.
I mean, Silver Leaves was the one I was looking forward to the most to hearing, The Way of the Fire. I just kind of wanted to hear the studio version of it, but One with the Shadows, I kind of had no idea what to expect. And even from the clips that he put up from the campaign video, I was like, okay, we've got like maybe 20 seconds of the song that we're hearing. Whereas, what about like the next like 6 minutes? It could
Yeah,
be
right.
anything, you
Yeah.
know?
It left a lot up to the imagination, and I think it all paid off in the end. Um, and what was also very interesting to me about that song, that was the only song on the album that also has a version in the legendary early demos in the time
Yes.
package.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense what you were saying before about it giving you debut vibes. And that's probably why, right? It was written probably around the same time as some of those songs on the debut, and he just hadn't found a way to finish it in a satisfying way. Um,
Yeah.
Lucky for us, he did, and now it's on the album.
Now it's
So,
yeah.
all right, and that segues into Ominous Clouds, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Ominous Clouds. This one took me off guard. This one was a bit of a surprise to me. I wasn't expecting it to be a guitar solo driven track. I was mostly expecting it to be another Fields of Snow, When Time Fades Away sort of deal.
I was gonna say I kind of had I don't want to say had an idea of what it was gonna be. So when they played Storm initially during what was it like their North American tour,
Mhm.
I thought the intro of Storm was Ominous Clouds, and Storm started once it picked up and got heavy. Um, but yeah, once I heard what it actually was, it completely caught me off guard. Not in a bad way. I
Yeah.
still think it's a great kind of like interlude almost into Storm. Kind of gives you a little bit of a break. It again, same thing. It kind of gives me debut vibes because of the end, the that ending solo in Beautiful Death.
Yeah.
It kind of gives me that kind of feel. But yeah, it could caught me completely off guard. But I think it's a great, segue from One with the Shadows into Storm.
And I think we're kind of seeing a theme here with this album, and that's a lot of things are surprising in a very, very good way. I don't know if that was necessarily Yachty's intention when writing these tracks. Maybe he was literally just being creative, doing his thing, and it turned out this way. But a lot of these new elements that we're hearing, a lot of these new choices he's making in the songwriting department, were very just like I was not expecting that, which was super neat because I think a lot of people were expecting a very formulaic album with this. Obviously, he's been working on it for such a long time, so you'd expect, a lot of the old ideas he had when he started probably would have carried over. And even if that is true, whatever ideas he made along the way were great additions to this record and really brought it to the next level. He could have easily made this another time one. He could have easily made this just another Forest Seasons. But I think he took everything and brought it to the next level while also keeping it fresh. And I think that is a huge reason why I'm just loving this album so much.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like an album that he wrote back in 2000, what, 2006 or something like that. That's kind of the same thing as what he was doing back then. It still sounds new and fresh, like he's progressing as a composer or
Yeah.
player or whatever. I don't know how else to describe it.
No, I
It
totally
sounds
agree.
new and fresh, and he's not repeating any ideas. It sounds completely it's new thing.
Yeah, to me, I kind of think of it like he's taking a lot of old, not old, I want to say a lot of classic Winter Sun ideas and putting them through a more mature lens with his songwriting abilities that he's developed over time. Yeah, so we talked a little bit about Ominous Clouds.
Even
I was at the
kind of you
oh
can kind of make it
yeah,
out.
it's having some trouble, but we could see it.
Yeah.
We could see it. There we go. This is more of a guitar solo driven track. It was a bit surprising. Um, and stylistically, something we haven't really seen from Winter Sun before.
I guess the only other thing I'd say about it that I kind of touched on before with the Way of the Fire, it kind of just shows how much of a monster guitar player Yachty is.
Yeah, yeah. So before we move on to Storm here, which obviously Ominous Clouds leads into, I'd like to just mention real quick that through listening to this album up to this point, on my first listen through, it became very, very apparent that when you look at something like Winter Sun's debut, that is a very song-based album. You have individual tracks serving an individual purpose. This is more of a sonic journey. From
Yeah.
beginning to end, it doesn't feel like an album. You feel like you're literally going on an adventure, which is something I really value.
Same thing with time. It kind of like picks off. I mean, I guess it makes sense since they're supposed to be, initially one album, but it kind of takes you, like you said, through this whole journey, starting with When Time Fades Away, finally ending with Silver Leaves. Um, and it feels just like you said, you're on this journey, and at any given point, you're kind of feeling and going through whatever emotions and stuff like that that he had when he was writing those songs. Like you can feel every single thing that he wanted to convey in each one of the songs perfectly, and it just flows perfectly.
Yeah. And that also, there's a point to be made there about how, again, when I was saying before about how there's not a single wasted moment on this album, every song feels like it has a purpose being here. Not only is every song rich with stuff you want to hear, but every song is placed perfectly. It just serves to enhance that flow that you're talking about there, almost to the point of making it sound like a concept album. I wouldn't really say Time as a whole is a concept album, but you definitely feel
Like there's
Like
some kind of story or meaning in there throughout.
exactly. Yeah, I mean obviously the word time is thrown around a lot,
Yeah,
and you could say that the loose concept is the passage of time. Um, but beyond that, like we're just saying, it really feels like from beginning to end, you are on an adventure. You're not just buckling down and listening to songs someone wrote. This feels very organic. It's just a joy to be able to sit down and spend your time just listening. There's a lot of albums, and I think we can agree on this, even a Winter Sun's debut, where you can put it on a car ride and just enjoy it for the individual tracks. This is one of those things where you can literally just close your eyes and sit down for what, 80 minutes, 88 minutes listening to the entire time, one and two, and just feel like you're lost in the depths of the sound here.
it's one of those albums that I feel like definitely benefits from listening to it all the way through,
Hmm.
rather than listening to each individual song, which you can do. And, as standalone songs, I think they're great,
Yeah.
but you definitely benefit a lot more from listening to it all the way through, whether it's just time one, just time two, or both of them back to back. It definitely, the way it's written and the way everything's arranged track wise and stuff like that, it definitely helps listening to it all the way through.
Hmm. And that's not to say by any means that this can't be enjoyed as a track-based album, because if you look at the master files he already provided, he literally has the individual like the singles version he calls it, I think, right? Where
Yeah,
he cuts off a lot of the, I don't want to say fat because it's obviously very important for the context of the album, but some of the more atmospheric and some of like the longer winded bits, and just gets you the meat of each song for a shorter listening experience, a more focused listening experience.
which I will say I'm glad he did that as an extra thing,
Hmm.
because with Time 1.5, I wasn't the biggest fan of what he did there in terms of cutting When Time Fades Away and Sons of Winter and Stars into their own things.
Yeah.
They didn't go right into another. When Time Fades Away ended, and then Sons of Winter and Stars picked back up. That I wasn't the biggest fan of, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I'm glad with Time 2, he gave you the option of, okay, if you just want to listen to the standalone songs, you can do that. But then here's his vision for the album.
Yep. And like you said, it is awesome that he has it as a bonus in the first place because there's going to be a lot of people who don't have the time to listen to the entire album all the way through, or again, just want that more focused, more to the point listening experience, and that provides it great. What I don't love is if he had released it as just the singles version, like that was the album.
Yeah.
Because something that bugs me, there's this guitarist for Symphony X who I'm sure you've heard of, Mike Romeo. He has two solo albums, at least his most recent two solo albums are War of the Worlds Part 1 and 2. And I don't want to make this video about those albums, but I do want to say the first one of those two, every song led into the next one in very much the same way as Time 1 or Time 2 does. On War of the Worlds Part 1, he made the very interesting and I think very poor decision of making nearly every track stand alone, which, considering it's part of a bigger concept album, there's a really big disconnect for me, not only between the two albums because they had that weird stylistic difference, but within the album itself, it feels kind of disjointed when you're listening to the album all the way through. Um, so I think it's amazing that Yachty decided not to go that route and did just um, make everything work as one continuous sonic experience here.
Yeah.
What were you on to? We're on to Storm. We're on to Storm,
Storm.
my favorite,
I
my
should have
favorite
been doing
track.
this the entire time. I just thought of it while we were waiting. So Storm, we're on to Storm now.
Yeah,
There's the
again,
there's the shirt that's kind of picking up. Kind of, I think I had to angle it just right. Yeah, you kind of saw it.
great art in that album booklet, by the way, that those shirts are based on. That what
Oh
is it,
yeah.
4K or 8K album booklet is absolutely gorgeous to look at while you're listening to the album. Highly recommend if you haven't done that already. Um, but yeah, Storm, what a monstrous track. When I heard The Way of the Fire, I thought that was going to be the biggest, most bombastic, heaviest track on the album. Storm proved me wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
If the way the fire ripped my face off, Storm just incinerated me.
right, right. That's how I was feeling too. It was intense from every single department. Again, going to the solos, which it has probably my favorite solo on the album, first of all. I'm just a sucker for that really, really fast stuff. The riffs are extremely heavy. You have the choirs coming in
Yeah.
for the verses or chorus. I can't remember exactly which off the top of my head. The song has probably like 20 different verses and choruses anyway. Um,
The back and forth in the pre-chorus or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but I
yeah,
yeah.
you know what I'm talking about. Absolutely, like you're saying, just face melting, mind bogglingly intense and dynamic. I think that's another word that can describe the album in general. Even if you're not listening to those dynamic versions, this is a very dynamic record, and Storm showcases that following right after Ominous Clouds, which is just such a chill track by comparison. You're not expecting this to be as heavy and as crazy as it is after listening
And
to
it's
that.
and in the very beginning of Storm, if you've never heard it before, you're like, okay, another chill song because of
Yeah.
that acoustic or clean guitar intro. And as soon as that's done, it's just straight blast beats, straight just everything firing on all cylinders. Kai is a absolute machine on this song.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I almost had a hard time believing that he was actually doing the drumming on that because I'd never heard him do anything that fast on any other Winter Sun song. So that was just like, wow, wow,
You
like, bro,
gotta
slow
listen to
down.
some. Yeah, you gotta listen to some of his stuff in Rotten Sound. Oh my God, the dude is a machine.
Yeah. Is that another one of his bands? I didn't know he was
Yeah,
in.
he's not in that band anymore, but
Okay.
they were a Finnish grindcore band, and oh my God, dude, he is an absolute machine.
I feel like a great part of this album is the drum performance because coming off of the Forest Seasons, Yachty had programmed all those drums, correct?
Yeah,
They weren't super dynamic. They served the songs, but you could kind of feel Kai's absence there.
yeah,
This song shows exactly why he's really needed in Winter Sun.
he's
The
a very
energy,
important component. Yeah.
it's he brings everything to the next level, and it can't be any more apparent than it is on Storm.
Yeah, I will say I don't want to make this about like the Forest Seasons or anything like that,
Hmm.
but it took me a very long time to get into that album. Like a
Yeah.
very long time, mainly because of the drums.
Yep.
Because Kai's the way he plays and the way he does his accents and fills and stuff like that, you can definitely tell they were missing from the Forest Seasons because
Hmm.
it was just very, I don't want to say robotic, but in a sense, it was, you can definitely feel that Kai wasn't there for that.
Yeah, yeah. But I will say I do want to highlight Yuka as well because the bass on this album is incredible, and I think Yachty's mix really highlights that as well. One thing that he did amazing on this album was making sure that everyone's performances stood out. And again, another prime example of that is with Yuka's bass playing here. It
Oh,
is monstrous.
especially going back to One with the Shadows real quick.
Yeah.
It
Hmm.
is whatever you want to call it, melodic bass line slash bass solo that's under that one part in the guitar solo. Just like you said, he made sure to make sure everybody's shining on this at some point or another.
Yeah. Like he could have very, very easily made this the Yachty show. He could have just made the guitars be center stage at all times. He could have made his vocals ridiculously loud. But I think this album shows that he really is a versatile producer as well. He is excellent at making sure every piece of the puzzle gets heard by the listener. And again, Yuka and Kai and Temu and Yadi, they all come together to make this cacophony of bliss, like it's unreal.
It's an entire experience. It's not like, I can't remember if we said it before, but this isn't to me, it's not just an album. It's a whole experience that you go through when you listen to this. And then yeah, going back to Storm is just absolutely insane. Like coming out of One with the Shadows and Ominous Clouds, it was a nice kind of break from all that organized chaos, I guess you can call it in a sense. And then Storm just comes in and is just absolutely face melting.
Yeah.
And then going back to the solo again, yeah, I'd probably agree. It's probably one of my favorite solos that he's written.
Hmm.
To the point I actually transcribed it back when they were playing it during their live shows from a really shitty iPhone
Yeah.
recording and kind of compared it to when he released the clips, and I wasn't too far off, but
Hmm.
dude, some of those runs, those diminished runs he does, it's just like tongue twisters for your left hand. I'm just like,
Yeah.
again, I'm like, dude, how are you doing this?
Yeah. Again, like I was saying, I don't envy anyone who has to go up on stage and sing and play at the same time. Even when he's not singing during those solos, I don't envy anyone who would have to play those in the
Yeah.
first place. Like you can hear everything going on and you're just like, how is this
How is
happening?
a human being doing this?
Exactly. And again, going back to even Kai's drumming, how is a human able to play like that? How
Yeah,
is human able to play bass like Yuka or play rhythm like Temu is on this? It's out of this world.
yeah. His solos are one thing, some of his riffs are just insane as well.
Yeah. And I think it speaks volumes about Temu as well that he's able to keep up with
Yeah,
Yachty. I mean, it makes perfect sense that he was chosen to become a part of Megadeth, in hindsight, because being able to play this material live at such a consistent and high level is really, really impressive.
insane.
And I also wanted to talk about this album lyrically, which is something I haven't really touched on. I know we were talking about it, not necessarily being a concept album, and although I still agree with that, I don't really think it is at its core. The lyrics on here are still really, really good. I think on the first Winter Sum album, there were maybe some growing pains as far as, Yachty didn't maybe have as great of a mastery of English as he does now. In the same way, Alexi Laiho did with some of the early Children of Bodom albums. Some of the lyrics were kind of janky. But here, there's like a really personal touch to a lot of these. And I think Silver Leaves and Storm especially show that off.
Silver Leaves right from the get-go. Um, it immediately, because I was going through, I don't have all the lyrics memorized right now off the top of my head, but going through reading the lyrics with the song and stuff like that, you can definitely tell Silver Leaves is a very, very personal song.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I don't necessarily know exactly the meaning behind all of the lyrics here, especially not the Finnish, which I've since already forgotten the translation of. Um, but yeah, you could feel Yachty put everything he had into making this a satisfying conclusion to the album, and it absolutely paid off.
Yeah, and just going back to the whole atmosphere building,
Hmm.
the very beginning of Silver Leaves, the first like what, like 2 or 3 minutes
Yeah.
is just sounds and atmosphere, just building and building and building until it finally starts and hits. And I guess since we're on Silver Leaves now, we might as well show that shirt off. I actually have two.
Okay.
So this is the new one that they. Oh, come on.
There we go.
There's that, and then there's that, and then this is the one that they released. I think before Time One came out, they released a Silver Leaves shirt.
Really? Okay.
Um, this is the original one, so it's just the Winter Sun and then the kanji logo on the front, and then in the back, the only thing anybody ever knew about Silver Leaves for the longest time. Oh, come on, come on, come on.
There we go. Oh, just those
And
lyrics there.
yeah, and when I die, I'm buried with the Silver Leaves. That was the only thing we've known about this song since whenever they released the shirt. I can't even remember.
Yeah.
Say, and then Yachty always being like, "What's at any time anyone would ask, what's the song you're the most proud of, or the best song you've ever written? Oh, Silver Leaves,
Yep.
the last song
Yeah.
on Tom too." It's like,
It was,
okay,
yeah, real jerk of him to not show any of that in the campaign clips.
yeah,
I'm actually really glad he did that because it made the
yeah,
entire song a surprise, even for people who had heard a lot of the material previously on the album from those live shows.
yeah. It was honestly, it sucked, but at the same time, I was like, I kind of want to wait to hear this one in full when it's out.
Yeah.
I don't want I want to go into this completely unaware of what kind of song it is.
Hmm.
And honestly, I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
I'm more
Yeah.
than satisfied with the way it came out and the way it sounds.
it was a really cool opportunity for him to flex his clean singing here, especially because he only does clean singing on this, right?
Yeah, there are
Yeah,
absolutely no growls or screams or anything in this song. It's
yeah,
all completely clean. And then the finish at the end was I knew about that from I think they had a the Forest Seasons campaign video, which I think someone asked if he ever sang anything in Finnish in any of the songs, or if he plans to. And going back again, him being him, he was like, the last song on time too.
go figure. Yep.
But I honestly, going into this, I didn't know what to expect at all.
Mm.
I kind of just in my head, I was like, okay, is it gonna be super heavy? Is it gonna be super a super sad song, super slow? Like I was like, I don't even know what to expect from the song, especially since in the campaign video, it was just the first couple seconds of just the atmosphere in the song. And I'm like, I kind of had this aura to it where it's like it's this song that like going to be the greatest song you've ever heard, but nobody knows anything about it,
Yeah.
you know? And honestly, it's a great way to close the album.
Yeah. And a great way to close the Time saga as a whole. I think it needed a really definitive, a really satisfying conclusion to make the fans happy, and I think this absolutely delivered on that.
And I do like how if you listen to Silver Leaves all the way through, go back into When Time Fades Away,
Yep.
the wind or the rain or whatever it is, and that it goes to, it loops perfectly.
Yep.
It loops back around perfectly.
It
Kind
makes
of
me
this sense that time's always going. I don't know if he
yeah.
intended it for it to be that way, but in a sense, it just kind of keeps going around, and it keeps going.
Yep. Yeah. Makes me want to just re-listen to the whole album again right now, you know? It's like, oh gosh. Some people listen to a song so many times like, oh, I'm sick of this song. I'm sick of not listening to Time 2 on repeat right now,
Yeah.
actually.
I
Uh,
can't, after all these years, I honestly cannot believe it's finally out, which means I guess I don't need this anymore.
yeah, the stress ball, there it is. There it is. Now he needs to make a stress ball for whatever the next album's going to be called,
Where's
right?
time three?
Oh, dude. I really hope he never does Time 3, to be honest,
Yeah,
because,
I mean,
there's
I'm
going to be
gonna
another
be,
storm of people getting angry about it. I am definitely interested to see where he goes from here, though, because now that he's untethered from, the necessity to keep in the same, vibe of time, keep that theme going. Um, Now that he's also not being pressured by fans to release Time 2, I think he'll really deliver on whatever he puts out next, whether it's another solo-oriented thing like the Forest Seasons, or whether he does decide to make another full-fledged band effort, which I hope is the case.
yeah, because I this is the kind of band where I think it definitely benefits from having every member there.
Hmm.
Because with the like we said before, with the Forest Seasons not having Kai there, I still like the album a lot, but it was definitely missing something without his drumming there.
Oh yeah. Speaking of the Forest Seasons, now that we've actually wrapped up discussion involving Time 2, I think now would be as good a time as any to hop right into the time package as a whole. I still had a lot of apprehension for this. I had a lot of expectations. I wasn't sure if they'd be able to be met or not. And this is another situation like Time 2 where they were all exceeded. I think since we just finished talking about Time 2, it'd only be appropriate to go back into Time 1 2.0. I think that's a great place to start. But
Okay.
before we address anything with that, I just want to say right off the bat, $56, or I think it was 56 for the pre-order, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
That was a
It was a
steal.
very good price
That was
for
a
what you're
steal.
getting.
Oh yeah. That's another reason I was kind of apprehensive about the time package because I was like, oh man, $56, that's a lot of money for just a virtual package here. But as you're all about to find out, it was well worth it.
It was well worth it. As soon as I saw it was up, I was like, okay, I didn't even watch the video yet. I was like, okay, there it is. I'm pre-ordering
Yep,
it.
there we go. Um, so yeah, how about you start us off this time? So time 1 2.0, what are your thoughts? What were you expecting?
So Time One 2.0, I do like how the guitars and the drums are a lot more present.
Hmm.
How the more metal instruments, I guess, are more present and forward. The biggest gripe I have with Time One 2.0, it's in Land of Snow and Sorrow. The melody guitars are so buried and so quiet, and that is that one grew on me a lot. Land of Snow and Sorrow, I actually didn't like it all the first time I heard it.
Hmm.
It kind of grew to be my favorite with Suns. And the lead guitar melody that plays right before the chorus hits is one of my favorite melodies that he's written. And the fact that it's so buried in the mix this time around,
Yeah.
I'm just like, that's really my only gripe. The other thing with that song though that I'm glad he added, I don't know if you caught it. Right before that melody guitar hits, he recorded a new line, a new vocal line.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
He says the what is it? Oh, the "Oh Carry Me Far Away" right before that guitar line,
Hmm.
that guitar melody that he did in the Sonic Pump rehearsals video
Oh, okay. Okay.
that I always thought was super cool, but it wasn't there on the original album. He put it there on the Time 1 2.0. I thought that was super cool.
Oh, yeah,
Uh
that's neat.
Overall though, I'm pretty happy with the way everything came out. Everything's so much more crisp and clear. Honestly,
Mhm.
it's so much easier to pick everything out because it's not super muddy like the original mix was.
Yeah.
I do like that there's, 3 different ways to listen to the album now though.
Hmm.
So whether you like this version more, or I guess technically 4 different ways with the Sonic Pump live rehearsals. So you have this, you have 1.5, you have the original mix, you have the live version. I like that you have like options now. So you,
Yeah.
even if you're not the biggest fan of 2.0, you can go back and listen to like 1.5 or the Sonic Pump stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But overall, I'm happy with the way it came out, and I'm glad he made a mix so you can listen through Time One and Time Two as like one complete package.
Hmm. And I think that's another strength of the time package as a whole. Literally every piece of musical content on here, Yada gives you multiple ways to experience it. Whether it's the Four Seasons Loud and Modern giving you the new version with vocals and the instrumental version, the Legendary early demos giving you the original versions and the remasters he did for the package. Um, you know, both Time albums, they give you the normal version, instrumental, dynamic versions, singles versions. Like there's so many ways to enjoy the new material that's been released. It's a bit overwhelming, you know?
I guess he figures the fans have been waiting so long. If they don't like one version, let's give them a bunch of other
Yeah,
something for everybody.
exactly.
And if you don't like any of those versions, you have the stems that the isolated tracks that you can go and make your own versions and stuff like that.
Exactly, yeah. Which is a really cool thing. I would have never expected an artist as big as WinterSun to do. To release the stems like that because that seems like a very typical like no in the music industry. Don't release the individual tracks, you know?
Yeah.
This is how you got to listen to it and that's it. But it's really neat and I'm really happy that he included those because you can still listen to everything individually if you so choose, like even just to study the compositions. And speaking of the compositions, the time package is really making me look a lot deeper into composing as an art form going forward with my bands. Because with Bury Me, it was always like, okay, here's a riff here, riff there, let's put them together, slap a bass part behind it and some drums, vocals, we're done. But now, after hearing the amount of depth that's discernible through these individual tracks, it's like maybe I should put some more thought into this, you
Yeah.
know?
It doesn't have to be just, okay, we have this guitar riff here, put some the other instruments and the vocals. It could be like, what if there's some other sounds and stuff like that on top of it or
Yeah.
behind it,
Hmm.
and it's kind of like, where can it go from here?
Yeah,
That's one
absolutely.
thing when I first listened to Time One, that was a very eye-opening thing for me too. I was like, okay, it doesn't have to just be your typical instruments and then like maybe a keyboard.
Mhm.
You can throw all these other different sounds and textures and stuff like that behind it, whether they're actual instruments or it's just sound effects or what have you.
Really, really eye-opening, I think, what Yachty's done here. Um, so can't thank him enough for that, certainly. Because even with the amazing performances of everyone else in the band, without the layering and the detailed production that he's done here, it wouldn't have come out nearly as well.
I made actually back when the Forest package came out. He had the stems. He released the stems for Time One as well in that package.
Hmm.
I made a version of it without the orchestra track in it,
Yeah,
it sounds completely different. It sounds so empty.
really. Yeah.
It's missing so much. It just does not sound right at all.
At one point, I tried doing something similar with Warning when that came out, and I'm in the same boat as you. I mean, besides me not being able to produce it well, I just took out the orchestral stuff and I was left with a very basic rhythm-driven track, and I was just like, "Where's the winter sun?" You know?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, definitely the amount of layering is something to behold, and I think it's something that a lot of people can learn from, like I'm saying, if you study the tracks. So would highly recommend that. So as for Time 1 2.0, what do I have to say? Gosh, I don't want to say it changed a ton. Like you're saying, there are a few minor details like the guitar volume changing in that one section, the vocal part that was added, the fact that you have like 8 different vinyl copies of it. Um, but yeah, jokes aside,
I guess you could say I like the album.
maybe I don't know, man. It might be one of your least favorite albums, like considering you have that many
Yeah, you're
vinyls.
right. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I probably hate it.
Probably not a fan. Yeah. All I can say is that it matched Time 2 sound wise, and that's really all I was expecting it to do. Um, and I think it's great for that. Now you have a seamless listening experience.
It kind
Um,
of just made it sound, in his words, I guess, the way it was meant to be. And so you can listen to both albums, the way they were initially, meant to be released, I guess, back
yeah,
in 2006, 2007. I guess, you have the intro tracks that weren't there before, but you can finally listen to the whole thing with one sound and it's one cohesive, album.
yeah. I could probably say a lot more because I love Time 1 so much, but I don't want this to turn into a Time 1 review. I just want to focus this on the package, you know?
Oh, the killer riff though in Sons of Winter and Stars in Time 1 2.0, and then the very beginning of Time, like the song Time. It's so good. The
Yeah.
guitars are so clear and heavy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's the one thing, like you were saying, with the guitars being a lot more forward in the mix, I think it benefits from that, especially if you're a metal fan. I think there's more to get out of this because there's a lot more detail you can find in each of the parts here. I think it was an expected part of the package. I don't think it caught too many people by surprise because there was a lot of speculation. Oh, it's called the time package. Where's time one? Sort of
Yeah.
thing. But absolutely floored that he included it. And I think that's really all there is to say about that. I'd be interested in doing a more in-depth review of Time One and even each of the individual Winter Sun records as their own video in the future. Because, obviously I am super passionate about this music and I'd love to go more in depth with it. But I think we could probably move on to the Four Seasons now, Loud and Modern. This was another situation where you had experienced this album first in its original version. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on whether this was an improvement, whether this was even needed in the first place.
So, like I said, I only listened to it. I only listened to it all the way through maybe once. Sound wise, it's definitely an improvement over the original, I would say. Um, Everything is just punchier. I would say in terms of the mixing department and the production and everything like that. Same thing though, you can definitely tell it's missing, fire's missing in the album.
Yeah. Yep.
Just from feel alone. Kind of the same idea with Time 1 2.0. The guitars, everything's super punchy, everything's a lot more clear, whereas the original one was the production was very minimalist, I guess. And
Careful,
very
careful. Don't bash your favorite band, bro. Come on.
I don't even know if minimalist is the right word, but it's very rough. And it was meant to be rough.
Yeah.
He even said it himself, but I do like how everything's a little bit more polished in the loud and modern version. Because on the original mix, a lot of especially the rhythm guitars, kind of just got lost,
Yeah.
like completely lost. You couldn't really pick out what was going on in certain points. Whereas the new version, you can kind of clearly hear everything. Like I said, it's kind of the same thing that I have. I've only really listened to it once, so I don't really have too much to say about it. But that initial listen, I did. Oh, Loneliness. Um, Probably one of my favorite songs by Winter Sun in general. Completely new re-recorded verse.
Yeah.
No
With
growling. I think that was the right move. For that song in particular, I do think the clean singing helps that song a lot more rather than the growling.
So I'm in the camp that actually never heard the original mix of the Forest Seasons all the way through. Because A, I don't own it on CD, and B, when I originally found it on YouTube again years ago, I only listened to bits and pieces, so I don't have a full range of emotions that go into how I feel about the new version of it. What I will say is even with the remix, it still sounds kind of, this might be kind of a weird way of putting it, but utilitarian, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
compared to the debut and especially time one and two, it's a lot more, I guess, pulled back in a
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah. And Yachty did say in, again, one of the more recent Winter Sun podcasts that it took a month to complete the album from writing to recording. So it makes sense that, for as long as of an album as it is, that it was kind of like you were saying, pulled back. There wasn't a ton of compositional depth. I think it was a little more formulaic, a little more black metal oriented too, which was it was an interesting element that they added, or that Yari added to the Winter Sun mix there, so to speak. Did I think it paid off? I don't think necessarily 100%. I still enjoy the album, and I think that the remix will hopefully change the mind of anyone who was turned off by the original version based on the production alone. But it's still by no means top shelf Winter Sun.
There are a couple moments in the album that to me stick out. Mainly like the chorus in Awaken from the Dark Slumber. That
Mhm.
chorus, the way that hits is just it's so epic sounding.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, the guitar solo in Eternal Darkness, and then pretty much all of Loneliness. To be honest, The Forest That Weeps, I'm not the biggest fan of.
Hmm.
Um, but the other three songs, the other three songs I do like. Um, would I prefer to listen to them over some of the other stuff he's put out? Probably not. I mean, Loneliness I do like a lot. That song in particular, I do think it's a great song.
Hmm.
Um, but as far as Awaken and Eternal Darkness, there's like bits and pieces of the songs that I really, really like. And there's other parts where I'm kind of like I could take it or leave it.
Yeah, and I think what maybe contributes to that is I feel like, these are four very long tracks, and I think that the length is sometimes artificial. I feel like sometimes there's repetition where there's not much development happening, and it's just to make the song continue. And
Yeah,
on time two, I remember saying specifically, there's not a wasted moment. I will say on the Forest Seasons, there are some parts where I feel like, all right, let's move on, And I hate to say that. I hate to say that
yeah.
because this is another album where I do think it's a great album. I do think it's very well put together. It's well composed. It's well played. And even with the drum machine, it still sounds really good, especially with this remix. It really doesn't hold up to the other ones quite as well.
And yeah, going back onto that real quick, saying like some parts, it's artificially longer. The main one, the Forest That Weeps, that one guitar thing towards the end of the song. Let me see, because I have all the stuff pulled up right now.
Mhm.
The part in about like 8 minutes, that guitar riff. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. The that part that goes on for I don't know how long. And it changes throughout it. There's like different time signature changes and different feels and stuff
Yeah,
like that. But I'm just kind of like it goes on for what feels like maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm just like, okay, can we move on now?
I definitely agree with that. And I think the drums in that section particularly don't help.
Like a disco beat or something like that,
Yeah,
something strange, yeah.
there's not too much going on there.
And this is not like ripping him apart or anything
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
no.
It's just like he was, in my opinion, for this album, he was like almost there, but he was probably around the maybe 80% mark, whereas like in my opinion, time one and time two, he just hit the nail right on the head,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah. I think with the Forest Seasons, it's an example of where you can hear his vision, exactly what he was trying to accomplish, but the end result was just it fell a little short of what he was going for, I think.
Yeah.
And I can't really blame him for that. Obviously, at the time that this was released, he was being pressured from every front to finish time two. And of course, he wants to explore different musical avenues. And I think this was his way of doing that, to go for that sort of atmospheric, more black metal sound. And because he was being pressured, I don't think he maybe was able to do as good of a job with it as he could have.
He did with what he could at the time,
Mhm.
given, all the pressure he was under.
Yep.
You can definitely see that on this album, definitely.
Hmm. But still super glad it was included as part of the package because, again, being that it's a remix, you can hear that detail better. Everything sounds a lot punchier, and it just makes for a more engaging listening experience, I think. So it's really cool to have here. And as much as it sounds like we're ripping into it, I'm sure most people should know that we do not dislike this album. Again, it's just compared to the majesty that is the other three records in the catalog. It's just like,
It's like the other three are absolutely amazing. They're like up here. Maybe
mhm.
Forest Seasons is like there.
Yeah, yeah, man. But yes, that's Forest Seasons, Time 1 2.0, Time 2. We've talked about all that. I think all that's left is the um legendary early demos and the bonus content exclusive to the Time package that you can't get anywhere else. Starting with the demos, I will preface this by saying that I barely touched them yet. In the interest of getting this video out as soon as possible, I sat down and I listened to, I want to say, maybe like 10 or so tracks from the demos. And given that there's five albums, so it's hard to give a complete comprehensive review of them in the way we can with Time 2. Um, but I will say that it is an awesome addition and absolutely elevates the package to another level, especially the Fantasy Metal Project, which Yachty himself said was his favorite collection of songs from the demos, and I can absolutely see why. Um,
I haven't listened to any of the demos other than the ones that he put up on his YouTube page
mhm.
during the promotion cycle for the package. I will say out of any of the ones I've heard, the Steel of the Gods off of the Fantasy Metal Project is probably my favorite out of any of the ones I've heard
Yeah,
by
that's a
far. It gives
really good
me
one.
such early Ensiferum vibes that I just can't not love it.
Yeah, yeah. With everything that Yachty's doing with Winter Sun now, it's almost easy to forget that he was such an integral part of Ensiferum on those first two albums. And those demos really go to show just how big of an influence he had on the sound of Ensiferum in the beginning there.
Once he left, it was never really the same in terms of the songwriting and everything. You can definitely tell, like, him, I guess, being the main composer or the main writer of a lot of it, that was missing once he left.
Yep.
Because once you listen to, I'm sure once I really get into some of these demos, I'm gonna hear a lot more of, like Steel of the Gods, a lot of like very early Ensiferum sounding stuff. The other I'm kind of pretty excited to hear the Sleeping Stars demo, honestly, because the
Mhm.
little clip that he did put on the YouTube page, it sounded completely different, at least to my ears. It sounded like a completely, it was basically, it's the same song, but it sounded super fresh. And I was kind of interested to kind of dig into that. I just haven't had the time to really go into all of it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's such a massive undertaking. It'll take probably at least a month for me to get through everything to the point where I feel like I've listened to it enough where I'm like, okay, I
Make
can
an
make a
informed
more,
opinion on what.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I don't want to go too deep into the demos, but I will say I didn't listen to Sleeping Stars, the demo. I did listen to Powers Within, Powers
Okay.
Inside, or whichever.
Yeah. Powers up. Powers inside.
Yeah, Powers Inside. And that's probably the most contemporary Winter Sun sounding song on the album. Obviously, the production is one of the better ones out of the demos. and I'm pretty sure Yari recorded the vocals fairly recently for that. I think that was one of the ones where it was an instrumental demo and he added vocals for the package.
Yeah.
Um, and you can kind of tell that he sounds in top form. Obviously, what could you expect,
Yeah.
right? Guy's a beast.
It's like, wait a
Um,
second, this wasn't recorded in the 90s.
yeah, yeah. Um, but it's also the most, I think, classic melodic death metal track on the album. A lot of them have that folk influence or black metal influence. This one is just very much a straightforward melodic death metal song, for the most
Especially
part.
that like keyboard in the beginning.
Oh yeah, yep. It
Yeah.
reminds me of some early Children of Bodom for sure.
Yes, yeah.
And that's not a bad thing by any means. I mean, obviously, Children of Bodom, great band. Rip Alexi, honestly.
Gotta be a Finnish thing.
Yeah, right. Um, I'm just glad that Yachty is around to make more albums. Because unfortunately now we're gonna never hear another Children of Bodom record. Uh,
Unfortunate.
yeah, but uh, but yeah, the demos overall really cool, and I'm glad he included the original versions as well because it's kind of like a time capsule into what was going
Yeah.
on when he was younger. Um, I will say the only demos I didn't touch on really at all was his four-track Madness compilation,
Okay.
mostly because I think first of all it's all instrumental, and I have a little bit harder of a time listening to just a full album of instrumental stuff. And the production is also definitely the worst. Um, Obviously, you
I'm-
can't fault Yachty for that. He was young when he
Yeah.
did it.
I do gotta say I'm interested to hear what Motorcycle Song sounds like,
Yeah,
just because he said that that was the first song he ever wrote.
yeah. I will tell
It's
you
a
right
very Joe
now.
Satriani vibe, according to him. So I'm kind
Yeah,
of interested to see what that sounds like.
it definitely sounds like the first song he's ever written,
Yeah.
for what it's worth. And there's a little weird issue at the beginning where there's like just like a split second of sound where it cuts out completely, and I wanted to make sure it wasn't just my version, but that's just unfortunately how it
Yeah,
is.
the way it is.
Yeah, but that's part of the charm, right? Just these little hiccups
Little
from the
glitches and
early
stuff like
recording.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, for the demos, that's pretty much it. And I think that basically wraps up our discussion on the time package. But before we leave, I think it's about time you opened up that secret special item folder
See what's in
and
there.
see what we're working with. Yeah.
All right, so let's get ready. All right.
Um,
Um, huh. Okay, hold on.
it's not much, but
But okay, so we got Fields of Snow 8-bit, which I'm gonna listen to that now because I definitely want to hear what this sounds.
yeah, yeah.
We'll have that on in the background. Legendary early covers.
Mm,
Honestly, and the Bruce Dickens. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Isn't that kind of funny? Like, it's not anything mind-blowing, but you're like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
It's kind of cool, honestly.
Yeah, so you're getting four covers and then the 8-bit version of Fields of Snow. Um, cool. All I have to say is it's just a cool little addition. There's not much to go on with the five songs you're working with, you know?
Yeah.
But
Oh, I love that the cover that he made for this Fields of Snow 8-bit is that pixelated, like kind of 8-bit look to it too.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
this is actually really, is it bad that I kind of want versions of each of the songs in like an 8-bit version now?
I don't blame you. And look, to tell you the truth, I guarantee someone on YouTube will make and post one within a month because you know how
Yeah.
quick those 8-bit cover people can work. So,
Yeah. Just give it to Rainbow Dragon Eyes. He'll probably do it.
yeah, yeah.
This was a nice touch, I will say.
Yeah. Just the icing on the cake that's already miles high, you know?
Yeah. I was expecting like live versions of songs and stuff like this. This was nice though. He
Yeah.
definitely delivered on this package
Yep.
after After however many years of waiting for this album, he definitely was like, okay, I gotta give him something special.
How does this hold up to you compared to the Forest package when you had gotten that?
Forest package. I'm trying to remember. I still have that saved on my computer. From what I remember, the forest package wasn't um anything super crazy. The biggest thing I think that that one had was the time one stems and then the forest season stems. This was definitely a lot more. This
Yeah.
was definitely a big upgrade from the forest package.
Hmm.
You know, the Forest package did have the remaster of the debut album. In my opinion, the best way to listen to the debut album now,
Hmm.
especially since it has the intro track for Winter Madness on it.
Love
The
it.
only thing I'll say is a little bit of Winter Sun trivia on the debut album, the original track order. I don't know if it was done on purpose or if it was just coincidence. If you look at the track order and the track times,
Yeah.
everything's ordered from shortest to longest.
Yeah. Yep.
And the 2.0 kind of breaks that up now since Winter Madness and Beyond the Dark Sun are swapped.
I don't know how to feel about that because on one hand, I think the intro and then leading into Winter Madness works great, but on the other
But
hand,
then going into Beyond the Dark Sun,
it
it was
feels a
such a great
little,
way to open the album.
yeah, yeah, because it has a very traditional melodic death metal sound, and especially to open an album with a really fast, just hearing the guitar playing
Yeah,
that riff, it's like, okay, I know exactly what I'm getting into. This feels, with the 2.0, it feels more like a traditional Winter Sun experience, at least what we've come to expect from Winter Sun now.
yeah. I will say, and Beyond the Dark Sun, it it is strange going into it second because that was the song that initially really got me into this band. Like I said earlier, that was the only song I listened to for I don't know how long. Because the rest of the album I listened to it, I just did not get it. I'll be
Yeah.
honest. First time listening through the debut album, I liked Beyond the Dark Sun, even Winter Madness. I was just like, I just don't get it. And then
Yeah.
eventually I kind of listened to it more and more. I was like, you know what? He's a genius.
Yeah.
What do I know?
But you know what's great about Winter Sun 2.0 is that unlike the qualities of a remix and remaster where like that's just the version you're working with. So if they change things, like not much can be done on your end except maybe
Yeah.
EQ. With the Winter Sun 2.0, you can literally just go into your tag editor on whatever your media player is, delete the intro, swap Winter Madness and Beyond the Dark
Yeah.
Sun, and there you have the original track order again. Like
Yeah.
Beyond the Dark Sun, that's another cool one to hear in the legendary early demos, the early version. It's almost completely intact compared to what you hear on the debut. So it's kind of interesting just to hear the earlier mix of it, I think.
Yeah. So I haven't listened to that yet. I haven't listened to that. What other ones from the debut? Sleeping Stars. I think Death and Healing was on there.
Hmm.
Was Winter Madness on there? I actually need to look. Another little tidbit of Winter Sun trivia. Beyond the Dark Sun, Winter Madness, and Death and the Healing, the demo. I don't know if it's the same ones, but the demo versions of those three songs were actually on the Japanese release of the debut album.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
So I don't know if it's the same versions or not, because I haven't listened to them.
yeah.
But Beyond the Dark Sun, the very intro is his voice like that pitched down, kind of like demon sounding voice.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And it's like a drum machine.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. So I think those are the same ones. But it's I will say I wish he kind of kept the keyboard, the harpsichord keyboard for Beyond the Dark Sun during those arpeggio parts because it sounds so cool. It's
Yeah.
very Children of Bodom-esque.
Yeah. I Guys, could you tell we're Bodum fans or what?
Yeah, where's my necklace that actually broke, so I can't wear it right now. We
Dang.
can't
Love that.
vote him after midnight.
Oh man.
Rest in peace, Alexi.
Yes, sir.
But I mean, I don't really have anything else to say about the package. I mean, I'm very satisfied with what we got. I'm
Yeah.
more than satisfied with what we got.
Definitely. Yep. And like I already said, easily worth the $56. It'll take me well over a month to even finish and appreciating everything. And another thing is I haven't listened to any of the master files through my good headphones. So that's another whole month worth of listening I probably have ahead of me. So
You gotta listen to those. That's what I've been
yeah.
listening to.
Yeah. I think that pretty much sums up everything because we said everything we have about time two, 1, 2.0, forest seasons, demos, extra content. Um,
To extra stuff, the secret items.
yeah, that's it. And you can actually see on Nick's screen there, one of the parts of the package we didn't talk about was just the extra images and the promo stuff, like the promo material, which is just a bunch of high quality wallpapers and stuff. Definitely worth checking out, but
Some extra
nothing
eye candy
too
walking on,
too much to
you
talk
know.
about, you know. Yeah. Um, so yeah, that'll be about it for today. But I will say one more thing before we leave is that if Yachty is watching this, which it would be an honor if he is, because we love you, man. Please collab. Please collab. Okay. We will bring you on. We will do an interview. It's gonna be amazing. We'll do an album listening party. We'll do whatever, man. Um, because I'm sure we both have a ton of questions for you after all this, but only so much can be said here without
Only so much time.
so much time. Oh my gosh, yeah. Now that the Time package and Time 2 is out, if you do happen to come on the show, we won't be drilling you with questions about the new album. So that's one plus, I guess. Something new to talk about, I'm sure. But yeah, that's about it. I once more want to say thank you to Kai, Yuka, Timu, and Yari, all in equal measure for making this album happen. It's absolutely sensational, and I could not be happier with how everything turned out.
I gotta say the same exact thing. That's no true word said, you
Yeah.
know. I'm
And
glad it's finally out. I'm glad, after however many years he was finally able to put it out, and I still can't believe I'm listening to it, honestly.
yeah, now I think all that's left, besides hearing whatever new album Yari puts out with the rest of the band, is I really hope that they play live again soon. I think he said something recently about playing live again after the release of whatever album comes next. And I'm going to be first on buying a ticket for that if it plays nearby.
Oh, you
Because
and me both.
yeah, have you actually ever seen them live?
No.
Yeah.
So I think the last time they came around here, I forgot when that was. Probably around the time the Far Seasons came out, so that would have been 2017. I wanted to go see them in Philly, but I didn't have a ride at the time, so I
Ah,
couldn't.
yep. That's the struggle. But we'll be prepared this time for sure.
Oh
We'll be
yeah,
prepared.
it's time.
It's time. It's time. I just need to hear Storm live. I'll be satisfied. Uh, but but yeah, that's going to be about it for today. We want to thank everyone who watched this far into the video because even once I edit this all together, I know for a fact this is going to be a long video. But it totally required the amount of time we spent to put this together because there's just so much to
There's
talk
so much
about.
stuff. Yeah.
Last but not least, thank you again so much for watching. If I had to rank time two on a scale from 1 to 10, I'd give it uh gosh, it's hard to say. I want to give it a 10. I'll
Yeah.
give it a 9.5 out of 10 just because the hype of, recency bias might be skewing my opinion. So I just want to play it on the safe side.
I'm trying to find a reason to give it anything lower than a 10. I'm trying to think of
Yeah,
big
yeah,
problems that I have with the album, and I'm just like, I can't.
yeah.
Um, I wish it was longer.
No, right? Yeah, yeah.
I'll give it um I'll give it a 9. 9.5, 9, just because of how long it took to come out.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's
We'll say
fair.
that.
So I think a pretty average, pretty safe score for the album will be a 9. But what's a score matter when you have music this good anyway? It's just about the experience. It's not about the number. So
Just listen to it. If you haven't listened to it yet, just put it on. Whether it's
absolutely.
through Spotify or you get the high quality master files from their Bandcamp, just find a way to listen to it. Just I feel like this is an album everybody's got to listen to at some point.
Yep, yep. Even if you're not a metal fan, you really do not need to be a fan of metal to enjoy this. This is really an album of music. This isn't an album of metal necessarily. And I can't stress that enough. If you enjoy a sonic experience or you think it sounds like something that might interest you, I guarantee you will get a kick out of this. So I think that wraps it up for today. Nick, I just want to say thank you again so much for joining me here. It's been a pleasure.
I agree.
talking about this. And I will see you in the next video. Maybe. I'll see you when I see you. All right, I'll keep you posted.
All right.
All
Thanks
right, see
again,
you,
man.
man. Good night.